It's 7:42 p.m. here in New Zealand, and you're tuned into 104.6 FM. My name is Walter Bryan, and I don't know how many of you are still out there with a working radio, but I'll keep talking as long as the generator holds and as long as this signal can punch through the static. The studio's running on a backup diesel tank, and the gauge is already sitting lower than I'd like, but silence isn't an option right now. The world outside doesn't sound like the one I grew up in. It doesn't sound like the one any of us knew just a week ago. It's quiet in a way that puts a knot in your stomach, like the air itself is holding its breath, waiting for something worse. Pretend you've just connected to this frequency. What do you tell the world in 15 seconds? What's the last thing you saw? Smoke? Silence? Soldiers? Comment your report like we're logging every broadcast. The windows are coated in a thin gray film that used to be glass clear just last Friday. It's not dust, not smog, it's ash. If you press your hand against it, it leaves a print like flour. I opened the door this morning, just for a second, and it was like stepping into another planet. The air tasted sharp, like biting metal. The sky wasn't blue, or even gray. It was brown and heavy, with a faint red glow that never seems to move no matter what hour it is. They're calling it a sun, but the sun hasn't really been seen here since the column went up from Taupō. What little light we do get is filtered through this veil of ash, turning the day into a permanent dusk. People still don't understand what's happening. Not fully. At first, they thought it was just another eruption, the kind that makes the evening news for a day before everyone forgets. The first plumes shot so high into the sky that satellites caught them, a column punching straight through the atmosphere like a spear. It was beautiful for maybe half a minute, in that terrifying way fire can be beautiful. Then the reality came. Ash started to drift, covering car roofs in Rotorua, then in Hamilton, then here in Wellington. Flights were canceled. Parents pulled their kids out of schools. People told each other it would blow over in a few hours. That was 3 days ago. I've spoken with people who made it out of Taupō before the roads became impassable. They said the earth split open. They said entire bays of the lake emptied in seconds, water surging up into tsunamis that erased campsites, boats, whole neighborhoods. They said the pyroclastic flow came so fast, no one could outrun it. Towns just gone, smothered in fire and rock before a single alarm siren could finish its wail. One man I talked to, a farmer named Hayden from near Tarangi, broke down on air yesterday, describing how the fields where his sheep grazed are now under meters of pumice. He kept repeating the same line. It was like the land turned against us. The government's still trying to sound calm. They're broadcasting from somewhere down south, Christchurch maybe, saying they've got the situation under control, that food shipments are being arranged, that ash clearing units are mobilizing. But the truth slips out in their pauses, in their clipped tones. Roads are blocked, power's failing. Cell towers are going dark one by one. My inbox, when it was still working, was full of messages from people saying the same thing. We can't reach our families. We can't get clean water. We can't breathe outside without coughing up black phlegm. I want you to picture this. You step outside and it feels like the middle of the night, except your watch says it's midday. The only sound is the crunch of ash under your boots. Cars are abandoned along the motorways, covered up to their windows, some with doors left wide open where people fled on foot. Dogs wander loose, their paws bleeding from the grit. The air smells of sulfur, like thousands of spent matches. And over all of it is the silence, because birds aren't singing anymore, and the hum of planes overhead, That familiar, constant noise is gone. Scientists tried to warn us. I remember reading about it years ago, the quiet threat of Taupō, how it had erupted in prehistory with such force that it darkened the sky across the world. They said it was dormant, but not dead, that someday it could wake. And now here we are, standing on the edge of what they called a super eruption, a word that sounded too big, too distant, too unlikely. But it's real. It's here. It's happening in our backyard. This is no longer just New Zealand's disaster. The ash is moving east, carried by winds across the Tasman. Flights in Sydney have been grounded. Canberra is seeing a haze. Reports are saying it'll reach South America within a week. And then the sulfur dioxide, that invisible gas, will wrap the globe, scattering sunlight back into space. That's what the volcanologists on the BBC kept trying to explain before their feeds cut out. The real killer won't be the ash choking our streets. It'll be the cold that follows. They called it a volcanic winter. I don't know how long this station will hold. I don't know how long I can keep talking before the fuel runs dry or the air here fills with too much grit to breathe. But I'll keep going as long as I can, because someone needs to. Right now, you're not alone, even if it feels like it. You're hearing my voice, and that means you're still out there, clinging on like I am. If you can, stay inside. Don't drink the water unless you've filtered it. Don't believe the rumors that this will be over in a few days. Prepare for worse. Prepare for longer. This is Walter Bryan on 104.6 FM, and I'll be here through the night. It's just after midnight now, or at least the clock on the wall tells me it is, because the outside world has lost all sense of time. The days don't brighten, the nights don't deepen, and the whole sky is trapped in a bruised twilight that never ends. The ashfall hasn't stopped. It drifts in waves, sometimes thick enough to turn the street outside invisible, other times thinning just enough that I can see the skeletal outlines of lampposts and rooftops hunched under the weight. It's quiet here in Wellington, but it's not peace. It's the silence of a city strangled. I tried stepping outside earlier with a mask on, the cheap paper kind you'd use for painting, and it was worthless. The ash is too fine. It seeps in, scraping down your throat until you cough so hard it feels like your lungs might tear. I saw a car abandoned halfway across the intersection, headlights still faintly glowing under a blanket of gray. The engine must have stalled when the filters clogged, leaving the driver to run. I don't know where they went. The footprints in the ash trail off into the haze, and then they vanish. The phone lines went out sometime in the evening. Cell service flickered and died not long after. All we've got now are these shortwave broadcasts, a few AM stations, and whatever voices can shout loud enough to make it across the dark. The government statement I caught around 6 said Auckland was being evacuated. Evacuated where, though? The highways are useless, buried in ash or choked with traffic that never made it out. Ferries aren't running. Airports are done. Maybe they mean south, toward Nelson, Christchurch, or Dunedin. But every report I've heard says the South Island's already overrun with people pouring off the ferries before they stopped. And listen, there are darker whispers too. Not from officials, but from people who've been calling in, desperate to be heard. A woman from Palmerston North said she saw army trucks setting up barricades, turning people away at gunpoint, saying the city was closed. Another man said he was in Hastings when the sky went black and the power grid collapsed. He swore he saw police officers raiding grocery stores, not to help distribute supplies, but to take them for themselves and their families. I can't verify it, but desperation is written all over this country now. and I'd be a fool to think that order will hold much longer. When the first eruption tore open Lake Taupō, the scientists said it was like the ground exhaling centuries of pressure in one impossible gasp. But it didn't stop. They're saying now, at least before the lines went silent, that this is a once-in-a-human-era eruption, something that happens maybe once every 100,000 years. A super eruption. That word hangs in my head like a curse. I've looked at the photos of Tambora in 1815, how it blacked out the sky across the world and gave us the year without a summer. And Taupō, even in its ancient past, has blown with 10 times that force. That's the scale we're talking about, and we're living it. I don't know if you can picture what that means. Right now, the crops in Waikato are already gone, smothered in ash. Cows are dying in their fields, suffocating because the grit clogs their nostrils and coats the grass. The rivers are thick with mud, the fish floating belly up. Power plants are offline. Solar panels are useless. Hydroelectric dams are choking on silt. The food warehouses in Auckland are dark. Shelves and corner dairies here in Wellington are already empty, and it's only been days. I have to tell you, what frightens me most isn't even the eruption. It's the cold that's coming. The scientists warned about sulfur dioxide shooting into the stratosphere, forming a veil around the planet. They said it'll cut sunlight by half or more. That means winters that never end. That means snow in places that don't know snow. That means famine, not just here, but everywhere. This is the kind of thing that tips civilizations over the edge. I used to think that was exaggeration, history book talk. But it doesn't feel like history anymore. It feels like right now. I keep thinking about something my father told me once. He said people think the world is stable, that the ground beneath our feet is permanent, but it's not. It breathes. It shifts. It waits. He said the earth doesn't care about our farms, our cities, our airports. It'll wipe them away like chalk on a board. I didn't understand him then. I think I do now. To anyone listening, store what food you can. Seal your water. Stay inside. Do not think this is going to pass quickly. If you have family, hold them close. If you don't, find someone. We're going to need each other more than ever. This is Walter Bryan on 104.6 FM. I'll keep this signal alive for as long as the fuel in my voice hold out. It's morning now, or at least it should be. The clock says 9:15, but outside, it's the same dark half-light we've been trapped under for days. The ash is falling harder than ever. I can hear it pattering against the roof of the station, a steady hiss like rain, except it doesn't melt or wash away. It just piles higher. I opened the back door earlier, and the drift was knee-deep, dry and clinging, crunching underfoot like broken glass. A neighbor from 2 streets over tried to clear his roof yesterday. He slipped, fell, and by the time anyone reached him, the ash had packed in his mouth and nose. That's what it does. It fills everything. It buries everything. The news, what little slips through the static, says Taupō has blown open fully now. Not just the first eruption, not just the column that rose like a tower into the sky, but the whole caldera ripping apart. They're calling it a VEI-8, the highest measure volcanologists even have, the kind of eruption that rewrites climates, not just maps. They say pyroclastic surges roared out across the central North Island, moving faster than any human could run, faster than any car could drive. Entire towns, Taupō, Turangi, Tokoroa, are gone. Not damaged in the way we normally mean it, but erased. The heat, the ash, the speed. Nothing survived in the path. A man named David rang into the shortwave line last night before it died completely. He said he was driving south from Rotorua when the ground started to roll under him, like waves on an ocean. The highway cracked open in front of his headlights. Behind him, the sky glowed red as if the horizon itself was burning. He said he saw a wall of fire and stone racing across the land, taller than the treetops, chasing him. He broke down before he could finish the story. I don't know if he made it. The government has stopped using words like contain or manage. Now they say relocate, shelter, survival. Auckland has gone silent. Hamilton too. Power grids are shutting down one after another. People are fleeing south, but the ferries have stopped, choked in harbors full of pumice and ash. Flights aren't just grounded, the planes themselves are useless now. Jet engines choke on this air. No machine designed by humans can keep working when the sky turns to grit. I keep thinking about the people who stayed. Families with no transport, no money, no way to leave. Farmers with animals they couldn't abandon. The elderly who can't travel. Where are they now? Some buried in their homes, maybe, doors blocked by the ash. Some wandering the roads, blind and coughing, trying to find water that isn't poisoned. It's unbearable to picture, but it's reality. And the lightning. God, the lightning. Last night I watched it from the station window. Bolts tearing across the sky, jagged, constant, flashing through the plume. The scientists call it volcanic lightning, static from ash particles grinding against each other. But to see it in person, it doesn't feel like science. It feels biblical. Forks of fire cutting through an endless night, the thunder rattling every window frame. It was like the sky itself was screaming. Ash has made the rivers undrinkable. If you scoop it up, it smells of sulfur, and within minutes the fine grains sink into the bottom of the container, coating it with gray sludge. People are already desperate. I saw a family filling buckets at the storm drains yesterday, scooping up black water just to have something. Children coughing so hard they bent double. Parents with hollow eyes. If this is only the first week, what happens after a month? After a year? The scientists warned of this, that once the sulfur dioxide climbs high enough, it spreads across the globe. They said it will scatter sunlight away, cooling the planet by degrees we can't afford. Crops need warmth and light, and both are disappearing. Already reports from Australia say crops are dusted with ash, fields suffocated. In days, Asia will feel it. In weeks, North America. This isn't a New Zealand disaster anymore. It's a global one. The human mind struggles to grasp numbers like these. 1,000 cubic kilometers of ash and pumice hurled into the sky. Hundreds of megatons of gas. But you don't need to understand the numbers to understand what they mean. You just have to look outside, see the world dimming, feel the cold already creeping in through cracks in the walls, and know the sun isn't coming back soon. If you can hear me, if you're still out there, save every scrap of food you have. Store water, even if it tastes foul. You can boil it. You can filter it through cloth, charcoal, even sand. Stay off the roads unless you must. Cover your face. And remember, this isn't passing tomorrow. This isn't a storm to wait out. This is the start of something much bigger, much longer. This is Walter Bryan, still holding on at 104.6 FM. The ash falls, the world darkens, and I'll keep speaking into this void until the silence takes me too. It's evening again, though the word hardly means anything anymore. The clocks turn, the hands move, but the sky stays the same. A bruised, dim twilight with no sunrise and no sunset. The ash keeps falling, finer now, almost like talcum powder, but it never stops. It settles on everything, presses into every crack, dulls every surface. I stepped outside for just a moment this afternoon, and the silence hit me harder than the smell. You expect to hear people, cars, planes, birds. Instead, there's nothing, not even the wind, just the faint, endless hiss of ash settling. I've been scanning the airwaves all day, trying to pick up anything beyond the static. Most of the official channels are gone now. The government broadcast that used to come through from Christchurch has gone silent. Some say the generator at their bunker finally failed. Others whisper that officials are fleeing south, abandoning one shelter after another. Nobody knows. What I do know is that Wellington feels cut off. People here are realizing no one is coming to save them. The supermarket near the station was emptied this morning, not in an orderly way, not with queues or rationing. The doors were broken, shelves stripped, cash registers overturned. I walked past and saw cans rolling in the ash, stamped flat, trampled into the floor. People aren't waiting anymore. They're not listening for instructions. They're taking what they can, and if someone's in the way, they're pushing past, or worse. A man was beaten with a length of pipe over a bag of rice. No police came. No ambulance. He lay there for hours until his breathing stopped. Then people just stepped around him, or over him. I used to believe in the strength of order, in the systems we built. But those systems depended on the grid, on fuel, on supply lines, on the illusion that the shelves would always be filled tomorrow. Take those away, and what's left? Fear, hunger, rage. It's happening already. The South Island, where the government tried to set up its base, is overflowing with refugees from the north. The ferries that made it through before the harbors clogged brought thousands of people, tired, coughing, covered in ash, and the towns weren't ready. Timaru, Oamaru, Invercargill, small towns with limited food stores suddenly doubling in population. The broadcasts that still slip through say fights have broken out, soldiers patrolling the streets, looting at night. Some say martial law has been declared in Christchurch, though I can't confirm it. What I can say is this: the sound of gunfire is no longer rare in New Zealand. Farmers down south are trying to save what crops they can, but even there the ash is falling, lighter but constant, and the temperature's dropping faster than anyone expected. It's the sulfur dioxide, spreading through the stratosphere, blocking the sun. They warned us about volcanic winter, but living through it is something else. Already the nights here feel sharper, colder, though it's supposed to be the warm season. I heard from a man in Dunedin. He said it snowed yesterday in late summer, just a light dusting, but enough to make people stare and go quiet. I think about the old stories, Tambora, 1815, how people starved on the other side of the world because a volcano darkened the skies. Crops failed, famine spread, thousands died, and that was with far fewer mouths to feed than today. Now we have billions. Global trade, global dependency. No country can stand alone anymore. And yet, here we are, cut off. The ships aren't coming. The planes aren't flying. Whatever food we have here is all we'll have until it runs out. The faces I see when I walk through the ash-stained streets, they're changing. People are hollow-eyed, shoulders bent, not speaking. They pass each other without nods, without words, as if saving their breath. Children cling to their parents, but even the parents don't promise it'll be okay anymore. They know it won't. Not in the old sense. Not in the sense of going back to normal. I sit here in the studio with the generator humming below and wonder how much longer the fuel will last. A week, maybe less. After that, unless I find another tank, this frequency will go dark. But until then, I'll keep speaking. If you're out there, if you're listening, you're not alone. Remember that. Even if the streets are silent, even if the houses around you are empty, this voice proves someone else is alive. This is Walter Bryan on 104.6 FM. Hold on to what food you have. Boil your water. Trust no promises of quick fixes. And if the soldiers come, remember they're just as scared as you. We're all walking the same ash-covered ground. It is the fourth night since Taupō tore itself open, though night has become a meaningless word. The world outside hasn't shifted in color or light since the first eruption. It's the same sickly, dim gray that presses down on everything, ash drifting like snow that never melts. The silence isn't natural anymore. It's not just the pause between storms. It's a silence thick with absence. No birds, no engines, no footsteps beyond the occasional shuffle of someone too desperate to stay inside. I'm sitting in the studio staring at a half-empty bottle of water I've been rationing since yesterday. Every swallow tastes like smoke. Every breath fills my mouth with grit. I brush my teeth and the paste turns gray. I wipe my face and the cloth comes away black. The world is coated now. Every surface. Every thought. Reports are harder to catch through the static, but they all tell the same story. Crops are dying, not just here, everywhere. Australia's wheat fields, gone under a layer of ash within days. Indonesia's rice paddies, spoiled by acid rain, poisoned with volcanic residue. In China, they're already calling it the year without warmth, though we're barely weeks into this. And in America, I've heard the word famine spoken aloud for the first time in generations. The cold is arriving faster than anyone thought it would. Yesterday in Wellington, the temperature dropped 10 degrees in just a few hours. Not from a storm, not from the ocean, from the sky itself turning away the sun. My hands are stiff on the microphone even with a jacket pulled tight. In Dunedin, a listener said their garden froze overnight. A frost, in the middle of summer. It's happening. The volcanic winter is here, and with it comes hunger. People in the city are burning through supplies that should have lasted months. Shelves were stripped in a matter of days, and now the scavenging has started. I've seen people prying open vending machines, smashing shop fronts, taking anything that might keep their stomachs from turning. A woman I passed on the street was boiling what looked like weeds and lichen in a pot over a pile of broken furniture she'd lit for firewood. She said she hadn't eaten in 2 days, and her children hadn't stopped crying in 3. There's violence now, more each night. I hear it outside. Shouts, crashes, sometimes the crack of a gunshot, though there are few guns in New Zealand. Knives, pipes, anything people can wield are being used. It's not strangers fighting anymore. It's neighbors. People who once borrowed sugar and milk from each other now tearing each other apart over a sack of flour. The South Island broadcasts that flicker through the noise tell of martial law spreading. Soldiers on every street in Christchurch, curfews in Dunedin, camps being built for refugees, though they're already overflowing, tents stretching beyond their limits, people lying shoulder to shoulder in fields covered with tarps. Disease is spreading there too. Ash in the lungs, contaminated water, no medicine left. And I keep asking myself the question I don't want to say aloud. How long before we're no longer a country at all? Before we're just scattered bands of survivors hiding from the cold, clinging to canned goods, boiling dirty water, waiting for the sky to clear? I think about Tambora again, 1815. Snow in June. Crops failing. Famine across Europe. Historians say that eruption killed more than the blast itself. It killed through hunger, through years of winter that wasn't supposed to be. And Taupō has thrown more into the sky than Tambora ever did. Maybe more than Toba, the one they say nearly ended humanity itself. If this is truly global, then famine is coming for billions, not thousands, not millions, billions. And we are watching it start here, in the ash and the silence. To anyone still tuned to 104.6 FM, I need you to listen closely. Save every crumb. Stretch every can. Boil water 3 times if you have to. Seal windows against the cold that's creeping in. And don't wait for the government to feed you. That illusion is gone. It's us now. Just us. This is Walter Bryan. The world is dimming, the air is poisoned, the earth itself feels hostile. But as long as you hear my voice, someone is still here with you. Don't let go of that. It's late now. The clock says 11:38 p.m., but outside it could be any hour. The ash in the air has thickened again. It swirls around the streetlights like moths, though the bulbs barely glow through the haze. From up here in the studio window, I can just make out the outlines of roofs sagging under the weight, chimneys snapped, gutters torn down. The city looks skeletal, stripped of sound and color. Every time I look too long, I feel like I'm staring at a graveyard. The shortwave I've been monitoring carried something tonight that chilled me more than the cold air already seeping into the room. A faint signal out of Sydney. The voice was broken, cutting in and out, but I caught enough. They said the ports are useless. Ash has choked the harbors, turned the water thick with floating pumice. Ships can't dock. Cargo is stuck offshore. Whatever wheat and rice was on those vessels is spoiling, and the crews are stranded with no way in, no way out. Some have abandoned ship, swimming for shore through black water. Others, they said, have radioed final messages before going silent. Across Asia, it's the same. Singapore's shipping lanes clogged. Manila's airports closed. The great chains that stitched the world together are snapping, one by one. It's not just a local collapse anymore. It's global. Trade, the thing we all depended on without thinking, is gone. When the stores empty now, they will not be refilled. I heard a crackling report from California. Snow in June. Vineyards withering, oranges freezing on the branches. A farmer's voice, raw, breaking, saying his family had worked that land for 3 generations and it was dead in less than a week. In India, the rice harvest has failed under the dim skies. In China, wheat fields are stunted, never ripening. The great bread baskets of the world are turning barren at the same time. This is famine, and it is spreading faster than even the scientists feared. Here at home, it's unraveling by the day. In Christchurch, soldiers fired on crowds trying to break into a government storehouse. In Invercargill, they say whole neighborhoods have barricaded themselves in, refusing to share what little food they have. The old idea of community is splintering. It's survival now. And yet, I've also heard whispers of the opposite, of people gathering in church halls, pooling what supplies they still hold, sharing water boiled 3 times over. The best and worst of us, showing themselves in the same breath. The ash has poisoned nearly everything. Rivers run black. Tanks of rainwater reek of sulfur. Even livestock are dying, coughing, choking on what they eat. I walked past a yard where sheep lay still under a veil of gray, their eyes clouded, their mouths frothing with grit. Children used to feed them, I remember, on my way to the station. Now the fence leans empty. And the cold, it's burrowing in faster than anyone expected. Houses without fireplaces are burning through whatever they can find. Furniture, old books, scraps of wood torn from sheds. The streets smell of smoke and wet ash. The temperature tonight is near freezing, though it should be high summer. My breath fogs in the studio. My hands ache. I keep thinking about what the scientists said before everything went quiet. 3 to 6 degrees of cooling, maybe more, lasting years. It doesn't sound like much when you say it like that, but it's enough to collapse harvests, enough to freeze rivers, enough to change life everywhere. And with the cold comes desperation. I've heard of riots in Auckland before it went silent. Riots in Melbourne now, in Jakarta, in Los Angeles. The world's biggest cities, full of people who depend on shipments of grain, of fuel, of medicine, are finding nothing left to take. Armies patrol the streets, but they cannot stop hunger. I sit here speaking into the static, and I realize how fragile it all was, how thin the walls of our world really were. A week ago, you could wake up, buy bread, check your phone, complain about traffic. Now bread is gold, phones are dead, and the streets are empty of cars. We built our lives on the promise of stability, and Taupō reminded us how false that promise was. To anyone hearing this, hold what you have, protect it, share when you can, but guard it too, because others will come for it. And remember that the cold is only beginning. Tonight it feels harsh. By next month, it may be unbearable. This is Walter Bryan, 104.6 FM. My voice is thin, my breath fogs in the light, but I'll keep talking while the generator holds. We're walking through the first pages of a new chapter of history, one written in ash and hunger. Stay alive, stay human. It is early morning now, though you wouldn't know it by looking outside. The clocks insist it's 6:20 a.m., but the sky is still that same dim, ash-thickened gray, with only the faintest red glow struggling through the haze where the sun should be. I didn't sleep last night. The air has grown colder, biting even here inside the studio. My fingers are stiff as I hold this microphone. I've piled coats on top of myself, but the chill seeps through anyway. This isn't just weather anymore. This is the volcanic winter we were warned about, and it's only the beginning. The streets below the station are changing. Houses are dark, windows broken, doors left open where people fled or were forced out. The ash has turned everything into a monochrome painting. Cars hunched under drifts, trees bowed and snapping under the weight. Yesterday, I saw a man dragging a mattress through the street. He wasn't moving it to a new home. He was carrying it to a fire. People are burning anything they can now. Furniture, books, clothing, anything that will feed the flames, even for an hour. The smell is acrid, clinging, smoke mixing with sulfur, but no one cares anymore. Warmth is worth more than air that's clean. Food is gone in most places. The supermarkets were emptied days ago. Now it's down to scraps, hidden cupboards, tins that were buried in the back of pantries. People are eating things they wouldn't have touched before. I've heard from families boiling lichen scraped off rocks, pulling up mushrooms from gardens they once thought were weeds, roasting insects just to give their children something to chew. The taste doesn't matter anymore. Survival does. Canned goods are worth more than gold. A single tin of beans can start a fight, can end a life. I passed a house yesterday where the curtains had been drawn back, and I saw the family inside huddled around a pot on a fire made from their own table and chairs. Their faces were gaunt, eyes hollow, cheeks smeared with ash. The father looked out at me as if daring me to try and take what little he had. I didn't stop. I didn't even nod. That's what we've become. People who don't look each other in the eye anymore, because kindness might cost too much. The radio waves carry stories from the South Island. Refugee camps swelling beyond control, diseases spreading, ash cough, fevers from bad water, soldiers trying to keep order, but even they are breaking. Some are deserting, taking what weapons and food they can to protect their families. Christchurch is a fortress now, they say, the government clinging to its last stronghold, but even there the shelves are bare. I heard one soldier's voice crackling through the static, saying they'd been told to shoot looters on sight. He said he hesitated when the looter was a boy no older than 12, carrying nothing but a bag of bread crusts. He said he couldn't pull the trigger, but another soldier did. His words faded into sobs before the signal went dead. And it's not just here. Reports out of South America say Argentina's grain harvest has frozen in the fields. In Africa, maize is failing. In Europe, they're seeing snow in July, crops blackening before they ripen. In the United States, fields of corn stand stunted and pale, never maturing. The bread baskets of the world are collapsing at the same time. Billions depend on those fields. Billions now face hunger. What terrifies me most is how quickly the body changes. Already, I've seen people thinned to skin and bone, cheeks hollow, eyes sinking. The sound of children crying for food is everywhere, muffled behind walls, carried down empty streets. And then the crying stops, replaced by silence, and that silence is worse than anything. We are not weeks into this, we are only days, and already the first wave of starvation has begun. I think of how fragile we were, all of us. We built our lives on routines, hot showers, warm meals, lights that always turned on when we flipped a switch, and now we are burning our furniture, scraping fungus from walls, counting crumbs. Civilization was never as strong as we thought. It was brittle, held together by threads of trade, electricity, and weather we took for granted. One eruption, one crack in the earth, and it all unraveled. If you're listening to me on 104.6 FM, know this. You must think longer than tomorrow. Don't eat everything you have in one night. Don't burn all your wood in one fire. Stretch it, ration it, cling to it, find water, even dirty, and filter it. If you don't have food, look to the things you thought worthless, weeds, insects, bark boiled until soft. Survival means lowering the line of what you thought was acceptable. Pride won't keep you alive. Only adaptation will. This is Walter Bryan, still breathing in this poisoned air, still speaking into this microphone while the generator ticks down. If you can hear me, then you're alive too. And that means the human story isn't over yet. It's the 7th day since Taupō opened, though days and nights blur together in this endless dusk. I woke this morning to the sound of silence so complete it made my chest ache. No cars, no voices, not even the occasional bark of a stray dog. Just the faint groan of roofs giving way under the weight of ash, and once or twice, a sharp crack like a tree snapping in the cold. The city is hollowing out, building by building, breath by breath. The air has turned bitter with frost. My breath hangs in front of me like smoke even inside this studio, and I've had to wrap a scarf over my mouth to keep the ash from cutting at my throat. The generator still hums, but it's weaker, coughing now and then like an old man gasping. I don't know how much longer it will last. Each time it stutters, I feel my stomach drop, imagining the silence when this frequency finally dies. I've been listening to what few voices make it across the airwaves, and they all carry the same message. People are dying in numbers too great to count. In Wellington, bodies are left in their homes because no one has the strength or will to bury them. In Christchurch, refugees are collapsing in the streets outside the camps, and soldiers are dragging them into pits when no food can be spared. In Dunedin, church bells rang for the last time yesterday, before the priests locked the doors, unable to feed the crowds that begged for shelter. It's not just here. Across the Pacific, the news is the same. Mexico reports grain harvests frozen where they stood. In the United States, cornfields have withered, wheat has shriveled, and the bread lines are stretching for miles. In India, the rice paddies are poisoned. In Europe, snow falls in June, thick and wet, crushing the last green shoots in the soil. This is not a regional famine. This is the whole world unraveling. I keep thinking of numbers. 7 billion mouths to feed, fields that can no longer grow, stores that will not refill, ships that cannot sail. How long before the lines snap completely, before the hunger that's only begun turns into something worse? A year? Less? Here in Wellington, the change is already clear. Neighbors who once smiled at each other across fences now glare through the ash. Doors are barricaded, windows blacked out. Families huddle in silence, afraid to let anyone know they have even a single can left. At night, there are shouts in the streets, clashes of metal, sometimes screams that echo too long and too sharp to ignore. No sirens follow. No help comes. The city police vanished days ago. Some shed their uniforms and vanished into the crowd. Others joined the military convoys heading south. The rule of law is gone. A man came to the station door yesterday, his face streaked with soot, holding a child no older than 4. He begged for water, just 1 cup. I had half a bottle left, and I gave him some, but the look in his eyes told me it wasn't enough. He asked if I had food. I said no. He didn't believe me. For a moment, I thought he might push past me, search the studio, take whatever he could. But then, he just looked down at his child, whose lips were cracked and bleeding, and he walked away. I stood there, watching them disappear into the haze, knowing they might not last the night. I wonder how many others are making those same choices now, between violence and mercy, between stealing and starving. Some turn hard, some soft, and every choice feels like it echoes louder in this silence. The mass die-offs are beginning. That's not a phrase I use lightly, but it's true. Not just the weak or the elderly, but whole families, whole blocks. In Auckland, the shortwave said bodies are piling up in car parks, covered with ash as if the earth itself were burying them. In the South Island camps, the death toll is so high they've stopped counting. I don't know if we'll ever know how many are gone. And yet, here and there, I hear stories of people clinging together. A group in Nelson sharing fish caught through ash-clogged nets. A small town in Otago pooling what fuel they had to keep one greenhouse running, feeding dozens from its harvest. Children gathering driftwood along the shore, bringing it home to their families like treasure. These small lights in the dark matter more than I ever thought they could. But the truth is, the lights are fading. The cold is deepening. The food is gone. And humanity is thinning out under the weight of ash and hunger. If you are hearing my voice on 104.6 FM, you are alive, and that is enough for now. Hold on. Even when the street's empty, even when the air tastes like death, you are not alone as long as this signal holds. This is Walter Bryan. My voice is shaking from the cold, but I will keep speaking, because silence means it's over, and I am not ready to let it be over yet. It is the 10th day since Taupō split the sky, though it feels like months have passed. The ash has turned the world into one long twilight, and the cold has settled in like an unwanted tenant. My breath fogs in front of me, even indoors. The heater is useless, the fuel long gone, and I've been feeding scraps of wood into a barrel in the corner just to keep my fingers from stiffening too much to hold this microphone. Every creak in the station feels louder now, as if the building itself is groaning under the weight pressing down on it. The famine is no longer creeping. It is here. The first week, people lived off cupboards, canned goods, whatever could be found in pantries. That is over. The shops are bare, homes stripped, warehouses looted. Now it is hunger. Real hunger. The kind that hollows the eyes and makes people move slower, speak less. Children don't cry anymore. They just sit, quiet, too weak to wail. When you walk the streets, you see them curled against walls, their parents crouched beside them, staring into the gray as if the horizon might offer bread. I caught a faint overseas transmission last night from what I think was the BBC before it cut into static. The anchor's voice was cracked, worn down, but he said plainly what we've been fearing. Famine is spreading across continents. India, China, the United States, Europe, all reporting crop failures at the same time. Snow in June across the north. Ashfall poisoning rivers in Asia. Maize stunted across Africa. There are too many mouths and no food to fill them. He said the United Nations has collapsed. Countries are breaking into pieces, each hoarding what little they have. Grain silos guarded like fortresses, ports barricaded with soldiers. This is no longer about politics or treaties. It's about who eats and who starves. In Christchurch, the government enclave, martial law is in full force. Refugee camps are overwhelmed. Fights break out daily. There are whispers, and I can't prove them, that the army has begun rationing by culling, cutting food to the weakest, letting them die so the stronger might last a little longer. It's not the kind of thing they'll announce, but it fits with what little gets through. The death rates, the silence in reports. Dunedin is said to be burning now. Riots, warehouses stormed, soldiers retreating. This country is tearing itself apart, just like the rest of the world. And wars, yes, wars, are beginning. I picked up a burst of static rough speech from an Australian station. They said Indonesian ships tried to land on their northern coast, thousands fleeing starvation, only to be met with gunfire. They said the government in Canberra has declared a state of siege, not against enemies of war, but against hunger itself. Armies will fight now, not for oil, not for land, but for wheat, for rice, for corn. Food is the new weapon, and famine the new battlefield. Closer to home, people are doing what they can. Some are scraping lichen off stones, boiling it into thin soup. Others are catching rats, stripping them down, roasting the meat black over open flames. I've seen people digging through bins of moldy food, eating what days ago would have made them gag. Hunger strips away pride. Hunger strips away rules. A man I once saw teaching his son to ride a bike was spotted last night, breaking into an old woman's house with a crowbar, taking everything she had left. When he came out, people said he was crying as much as she was. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Just half a stale biscuit and water that tasted of ash. My stomach cramps and twists, but there's nothing left here in the studio but words and static. I tell myself speaking is enough, that keeping this signal alive means something. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But silence would be worse. Somewhere out there, someone is hearing this. Maybe you're huddled in a basement with your family. Maybe you're alone in a flat, clutching the radio like it's a heartbeat. Maybe you're walking through the ash with a small pack on your back, listening as you move. To all of you, I need to say this. Don't give up. Even now, don't give up. Boil weeds, catch insects, burn whatever will burn. Share when you can, because loneliness will kill faster than hunger. Remember that people survived Taupō, survived Taupō. They lived through winters without summers, famines, plagues. Some endured, and we will too, if we keep going, one day at a time. This is Walter Bryan, 104.6 FM, speaking into the dark, into the ash, into the silence. As long as this generator hums, as long as my voice holds, you are not alone. It is the 13th day since the eruption, though if you were outside, you would swear time had stopped. The sky hasn't brightened in nearly 2 weeks, just the same dull shadow pressing down, ash still falling like the slow collapse of the world itself. When I step to the window, I can barely make out the outlines of the hills. They look more like dunes now, buried under gray. The city below has thinned into silence. Even the desperate shouts of looters have grown rare. People are conserving strength, conserving breath, because hunger and cold have made every step feel like lifting stones. The world beyond our island is unraveling. I caught fragments of a transmission from what used to be the BBC. They said Parliament has fled London, riots in Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, people storming warehouses, soldiers firing into crowds, whole neighborhoods burning. France declared martial law last night. Germany has gone silent. Russia claims it can still feed itself from stockpiles, but the voice delivering that message sounded hollow, like he knew it was a lie. In the United States, reports speak of civil breakdowns spreading from the cities outward. In New York, food riots turned into street wars. In Chicago, gangs seized entire districts, demanding tribute for cans of food. Los Angeles has fallen quiet. Too quiet, which might mean the fighting burned itself out, or that there's nothing left alive to report. Closer to home, Christchurch is still clinging to its role as the seat of government, but I've heard whispers that the officials have withdrawn deeper south, maybe even into underground shelters. Soldiers remain in the streets, enforcing curfews, but their loyalty is thinning. Families of soldiers starve the same as everyone else. Some desert, some turn violent. Dunedin is in chaos. Half the city burned in riots when the last grain store was emptied. Timaru has closed itself off, barricading the roads, turning away refugees with warning shots. Whole regions of this country are fracturing into isolated enclaves, each clinging to survival with what little they have. Here in Wellington, the collapse is quieter, but no less final. Supermarkets stripped bare. Hospitals without power or medicine. The dead left where they fall, because no one has strength to carry them. I walked past a school yesterday where the windows had been broken and desks dragged into the yard for firewood. Children huddled around a barrel, shivering, their eyes empty of the spark children are supposed to have. Their teachers tried to keep them warm, tried to keep them alive, but the desperation in their faces told me they don't know how much longer they can. And yet, even in this, some sparks of hope remain. I heard of a community in Nelson that dug old greenhouses out from beneath the ash, sealing them tight, planting what seeds they had left. They ration the light from salvaged lamps, coaxing out leaves from the soil. In Otago, families have turned caves into shelters, using geothermal springs to stay warm. Along the coast, small groups fish through the pumice-choked waters, pulling in whatever the sea will still give. These are not solutions, not in the old sense, but they are survival, and survival is enough for now. I can't ignore the other stories, though. Stories of cannibalism already whispered in the camps. Stories of soldiers choosing who gets food and who doesn't, and those who don't collapsing into silence. Stories of whole towns where the only sound is wind hissing through broken windows, the inhabitants either fled or gone. This is what famine does. This is what volcanic winter means. Not just empty bellies, but a tearing apart of everything we thought made us civilized. And yet, we are still here. You are hearing my voice. That means you are still alive. That means you are still human. And as long as even one of us speaks into the silence, we have not been erased. If you are listening on 104.6 FM, hold on to whatever warmth, whatever food, whatever scraps of hope you have. Protect it. Share it if you can. And above all, endure. This is Walter Bryan, voice shaking, throat raw, still speaking into the dark. Because silence is surrender, and we are not ready to surrender yet. It is the 16th day since Taupō tore the sky apart, though each day feels less like time passing, and more like the world decaying in slow motion. The ash has piled higher, soft drifts swallowing cars up to their mirrors, fences buried to their tops. The roofs that haven't already caved groan under the weight, sending muffled crashes through the still air as homes give way one after another. The city is being swallowed, street by street, and still the ash falls. The hunger has carved people hollow. I walked outside this morning, pulling the scarf tight over my mouth, and saw them. Shapes moving slow, bent low, faces streaked with soot. They didn't speak. They didn't even glance at me. They shuffled past like ghosts. A woman was carrying what looked like the leg of a chair, wrapped in cloth, clutched to her chest like it was treasure. A man knelt in the gutter, scraping at the ash with a tin lid, digging for anything left behind. These aren't the people I once knew in Wellington. They're shells. Bodies pulled thin by days without food, minds fraying under the cold. Across the shortwave, the stories are darker still. Entire governments are collapsing, the thin veil of order shredding. The South Island broadcasts that crackle through, say, Christchurch's government enclave is breaking apart. Ministers have gone into hiding, bunkers sealed. Soldiers are running checkpoints as their own fiefdoms now, deciding who eats and who starves. One report said a colonel seized a warehouse of canned food and declared himself protector of that district. Protector, they called it, but the truth is, he's a warlord. Power is no longer measured in votes or offices. Power is who controls the last tins, who controls the guns. I caught a signal from across the Tasman before the static drowned it. They said refugee boats have begun pushing south from Indonesia and the Philippines, desperate masses sailing in anything that floats, heading for Australia and New Zealand. But the seas are black with pumice, engines clogging, boats breaking apart. Those who reach shore are met with gunfire. The governments there call it defense. But it is fear. Fear of more mouths, fear of collapse. And it isn't just Asia to Australia. Europe is tearing itself in the same way. Germany has split into armed zones. France burns with riots. Italy is silent except for the Vatican's final broadcast begging for prayer. In the United States, I've heard whispers of militias rising, taking towns for themselves, roads turned into battle lines. Food is worth more than gold now. more than oil ever was. And where food is stockpiled, men with weapons gather to rule. Here, in what remains of New Zealand, we are fracturing too. Nelson's greenhouse communities guard their crops with watchmen carrying spears and axes, the old tools brought out again. In Otago, coastal villages bar their doors against strangers. People who once opened their homes now greet travelers with rifles scavenged from abandoned farms. The South Island is no longer a single country. It is a patchwork of enclaves, each clinging to survival. The refugee camps are horror made flesh. I've heard from those who fled them, voices broken and trembling. Tents stretched over mud, bodies packed in rows, coughs tearing through the air, children's bellies swollen with hunger, soldiers patrolling with rifles, food doled out in spoonfuls, never enough. And then, when disease comes, the sick dragged outside, left to freeze in the ash. No graves, no prayers, just silence. I know I should offer hope, but I won't lie to you. The world we knew is gone. Governments are shadows, borders are breaking. The old systems, trade, electricity, medicine, they were fragile threads, and Taupō cut them clean. Now we are ruled by hunger, by ash, by cold. And into that vacuum, men rise with guns and stolen warehouses, calling themselves protectors, warlords, and people follow, because following means a chance at food. But still, even here, sparks of humanity flicker. A man in Nelson told me through the static that they take turns teaching children by candlelight, teaching them to read with whatever books they've saved, telling them stories to remind them they're still more than starving mouths. A group in Otago gathers each night to sing hymns, voices rising thin into the ash-choked air. And I, here in this studio with frost on my breath, still speak. Because as long as a human voice carries through the static, we are not finished. This is Walter Bryan, 104.6 FM. If you hear me, hold your ground. Find others. Protect each other. Because soon, survival won't just mean finding food. It will mean choosing who we are in the dark.